Hello, and welcome to Beyond the Code podcast by CodeMonk.ai, a space dedicated to conversations about product development, tech hiring, latest tech trends, and challenges that tech leaders often face in their day to day jobs. Today, we are joined with Nick Holzherr, founder of Wish.com, which was acquired by Samsung just before the pandemic. Nick is now the CEO of Samsung Food, running a globally distributed tech teams from South Korea in the east to California in the west coast of the USA. We will talk about his background and how he exited his startup to Samsung. We'll hear about managing a globally distributed team, is time tracking a good idea, what are the current technology trends, and more. Let's hear it from Nick.
This is first in our series, so quite chuffed to have Nick you as our inaugural guest. I think your journey has been impressive. So why don't we start with your journey? How did you get where you are today over the last few years?
Thanks for having me on the podcast. So it's been a kind of a long journey, and even Whisk, now Samsung Food, has been really not just one company, but 3 or 4 companies as it's kind of evolved and as we've tried to find product market fit. But we started off as a consumer application trying to basically solve a personal problem I had, which was how do I get all the ingredients for the recipes that I want to cook in a way that feels less burdensome? And then how do I make that cooking experience go wrong less often as I was kind of learning to cook and learning to go and cook for myself just after university. That we tried that for a couple of years. We raised money for that. I had previously been a contestant on the BBC Apprentice, which had got a lot of media coverage. I got to the final. That meant I had lots of people come to me and offer investment. So we got some cash for this business. The challenge that we faced really was how do you get user acquisition in a consumer business? So we had to basically restructure the whole business when we basically failed to get enough users. And looking back, we actually didn't do that badly. We had about 500,000 users, I think, at that time. But it just didn't feel like we'd get to the place where we wanted to get to. So we built a B2B platform, selling our core technology that we basically built to big grocery retailers like Tesco and Walmart and Amazon and publishers, and then we expanded that. It's kind of like a third phase into some building the platform for some big IoT companies like Bosch and Samsung, and then we were acquired by Samsung. And Samsung sort of saw that we had basically integrated powering a lot of their experiences for a lot of their hardware, or not a lot, but for the digital appliances space, in particular the fridge, but not just the fridge, also other appliances that they had. And they got this smart fridge with a massive screen on it. Right? So we basically powered the shopping list, the meal plans, a lot of the images for content there, the matching of the pantry to the shopping list. And then as we joined Samsung, it became clear that the opportunity that we actually saw right at the beginning of our journey in Whisk, of building a consumer proposition, made a lot of sense at Samsung because they have distribution, being able to distribute an app through the hardware they have. They've got these screens and these devices in almost every home in the world, right? And if you can install it on that device set, then you actually get to users in a way that you don't have to go and acquire your own users with paid ads or whatever. But in that journey, we have scaled. Right at the beginning, we scaled to 20 people. We then went down to 3 people, and then we went up to 10 people, and down to 5 again, and then back up to 20. And we were really trying to find product market fit. And it was different businesses. It was a different business model in that journey, different people, different experiences. Learned a lot. It's been great fun. And of course, at the end, we, getting the exit to Samsung was a good outcome for shareholders. It was a good outcome because we then scaled to over 100 people with them. So there was a good ending to the story, although it's not ended yet. Of course, it's still ongoing. But in terms of the Whisk journey and the founding story, that kind of, the exit is kind of an end. And So a good end, but definitely sort of lots of turbulence and lots of learnings, and definitely not a smooth, straight journey on the way up.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think as we are trying to scale this CodeMonk platform as well, we have seen similar experiences where we are like few months we are growing. We have like quite a few users signing up to the platform, requesting services and all. A few months then it feels like, okay, you know what, we are not getting users, we are not getting customers. What do we need to change? Where do we pivot? We go back to the drawing board and again try to figure out, okay, what's going wrong, what's working for us, what's not working, and take the next step, right? So it's never a straight line. As a founder, it's quite interesting that it's never is a straight line, and it's a lot of experimentation that we end up doing. And we'll come back to that journey. But you mentioned about your current team at Samsung. I think you said just more than 100 people. So how is your current team structured? I would be great to know about that.
So we're globally, in 2016, before we were acquired, we decided to go fully distributed, as in, remote first, not, and we had some offices at that time still, but that's going to be made the big switch. And we've always had team members that were not, were located in a different country right from the starting of founding in 2012. But 2016, we made that full switch. When we were acquired by Samsung, they were like, they'd never acquired a company that was fully distributed, right? They were like, so can we come and announce the acquisition in your office? And we're like, well, we actually don't have many people in an office. There's no real place to come. And well, could you bring them all? And we're like, well, we could bring them all, but what are we going to tell them all that why they're coming to the UK and why they have to apply for visas, which might take 2 months? And so it's kind of a weird moment for them as well, I think, where they're like, wow, we're acquiring a company that's fully distributed, and that's so different to what Samsung was used to in pre-COVID in 2019. This is right at the beginning of 2019. So as we scaled, I was grateful that Samsung actually supported the culture that we had built and the methodology we had been using in building a distributed team, and allowed us to continue that. And actually encouraged us in ways of to expand it in places where we didn't have presence before, but Samsung had presence, so that we could integrate well with Samsung. So we scaled super fast. We went from 30 to 90 people within about 9 months, right? So of joining. So by the end of 2020, the end of 2019, we were acquired in 2019. By the end of 2019, we had almost 100 people, and that transformation of being acquired, getting integrated, getting used to kind of building, okay, what's the new norm now? And then hiring a bunch of people to again scale up, all happened within quadrupling the team size, essentially, all happened within 9 months. So that was loads of lessons learned about how to hire, how not to hire, what to do, things I would do a little bit differently. But on balance, I think we did a good job, because that team we have today is I'm very proud of. But we definitely made some mistakes too. But distribution, globally distributed wise, we now had some office presence in Tel Aviv. We opened up an office presence in LA and in San Francisco and in Berlin and in Seoul. And we're suddenly we were previously working at maybe 4 or 5 hours time difference in our Whisk team, and now suddenly at Samsung we had -8 GMT to +8 GMT. Seoul and Korea. Seoul in Korea and San Francisco on the west coast of the US are about as far away from each other. We're triangulated, basically, perfect triangle on the time zones, right? 8 hours. All of us are 8 hours apart from each other. Makes it almost impossible to be on the same call at the same time. Although we do it. We do calls at the same time. And then cultures, very, very different too, right? We had lots of people who were from Russia. We had some from Eastern Europe. And the Russian Eastern European culture is kind of one big group in our team. We then had Seoul and Korea, where again their culture is very different, almost the opposite, I would say, in some aspects to kind of a Russian culture. It's nowhere near as direct. Russians are quite direct. Koreans are the opposite. And then you've got the Americans, who we had a whole bunch of Americans join the team, right? Who again were so different as well. So you've got these really different cultures. I would say the British culture is kind of maybe a middle ground somewhere, although I don't think you can call it that because they're all such different cultures. So fascinating to kind of go from this small team, smallish, 30 people, to suddenly over 100, working with thousands of people in Samsung. So many different cultures, so many different time zones. Can't get everyone on the call at the same time. Like, how the hell do you manage this? It still is fun, but it was lots of learnings of how to do it.
Yeah. That's interesting. We currently have a fully distributed team, the CodeMonk as well. We never had any physical office. And I think 90% of our team members have not met each other in person ever. And most of them have certainly not seen me in person. Everybody has seen each other on calls, but not in person.
Yeah.
And when you talked about this whole, East +8 and -8 time zone, funny enough, I had a similar setup with Nokia. I used to work for Nokia back in 2008, 2009 time period. And my delivery team was spread all the way from Japan in the east to Vancouver in the west, and we had a few teams in India, in Germany, in the UK, and we also had a team in China actually. And every single day was like 24/7 high-paced delivery model, and nothing really ever stops. You end the day and come back in the morning, and so much has happened when you come back. But I loved it. I think the pace of delivery was crazy. I've never experienced something like that before, and I think the learnings I had there always stayed with me. And wherever I went after that, any kind of delivery teams I tried to build, always try to see how can you, what's the word, how can you, time multiplex different capabilities across different time zones. So your day is just a lot more longer from productivity point of view, and you get a lot more done faster, and it's all about speed. I think in startup world, which you also come from, speed is the everything, right? Speed matters. How fast can you go to the market? How fast can you iterate, and how fast you can improve your offering to win the customers, so I think this, I'm a big fan of this, just having like distributed teams, getting people in the office. Okay, there might be some use cases for that. Maybe, it's always good to meet people in person, have more social context to it. But I think wasting time in commuting, all those things, I think I'm done with that, to be honest. I hate going to office now, if you ask me. I like going out, as in meeting people, but not to an office to do my 9 to 5, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I miss the office, and I say that having not been in an office, or not long term anyway, not for more than a few days at a time, for 4 years or 5 years, or probably more actually. I mean, I haven't had my own office for probably almost 10 years. I miss some of that like connection with people that you get when you're working in person, but the advantages the things I gain outweigh that, the things that I miss, right? And I'm able to get some of that kind of the things that I miss by meeting up with. I meet up with local people, to me, who sometimes once every couple of weeks or once a month, and we do a day of co-working in WeWork. I was doing a day of co-working yesterday with a friend of mine in WeWork. So I can fill some of that that personal need that I have through that. But the advantages I get, as you said, through not having to commute, and be able to spend time with my family by being way more productive, right? I think as long as you're good at working in a home office, which I think I've become. Not everyone is naturally suited to it, but if you are and you can make it work for you, you can be super productive, I think. So that I find I value a lot. But the main thing I value in building distributed teams, I would say, is the talent that you're able to hire as a business. And it comes down to budget too. People don't talk about the budget thing that often because they kind of like, it feels like a dirty topic in some ways, but it is cheap depending where you hire. Obviously my American and Korean hires are not cost effective compared to UK salaries, but they bring other things. But experience and in the West Coast in the US, amazing experience in building scale tech businesses, which we just don't have in some of the other jurisdictions that you can hire in. And then in Seoul, obviously the Korean closeness to the Korean culture is super important understanding of that. But we hire, the fact that I was able to hire people across Eastern Europe and Russia at what local rates was, brilliant salaries. We pay people way more than they were previously on in most cases. But it was maybe half of the rate that we would need to pay someone in the UK to get that same quality of candidate. And also the quality of candidate you're able to get at that time. It's changed a little bit now, but I think it's still true. The quality of candidate you're able to get in places that were not in the UK were like, equivalent of someone who would in the UK would be working for Google or Facebook or something in London and be getting paid like a crazy high salary. And as a startup, we just weren't able to pay the kind of salaries that Google or Facebook or whoever was paying, right? So we just couldn't compete. And then there's also the fact that you can get really specialized talent. So you can get specialized talent, like, we were looking for someone who could build out our knowledge graph back in 2014. And it was in the food space, food knowledge graph, needed to have a lot of like scientific understanding of how the food stuff works. And we literally found someone who was, could code, who had worked building ontologies before, who had worked in a science company building food knowledge graphs, like the exact thing we needed, right? And it's like, so when you search on this global database of people, you can find that needle in a haystack in a way that there's no way I'd be able to find that in my city or maybe even in my country. The other problem we had was we built our entire backend on Scala, which had pros and cons, and there's a different, probably a whole different podcast on whether or not to build your backend in Scala or not. But we did build it in Scala, and like, how do you find Scala developers? Like, there's not that many of them in the world, right? So then again, like, being able to hire globally and find all the right Scala developers was like really, really valuable for us. So I think there's like, you can find amazing talent. You can afford that amazing talent. The speed of hiring is way faster. You can put a job advert out and you can have someone in seat within a week. It's not always that fast. It can sometimes be 3 months, but you can have it within a week. And there were other startups that were competing with what we were doing at Whisk back in 2014. Ziplist was one of them, and who raised way more money than we did. And they shut down because they ran out of money, right? And we were kind of the cockroach in the market. We were able to kind of hang on in there, not shut down, still run, still have stuff up and running, still get through. And then when the market timing was right for us, because we were too early initially, when the market timing was right for us in 2018, 2019, we were there. We had the experience. We had the back. We had been in the market for 6-7 years. We had a really a mature platform and lots of experience doing it. We had some of the customers on our roster, and we took advantage and were able to scale and get a good outcome. So like, there's, without distributed work, we would not be here. Like, it was core to why we were able to do what we do. And
another thing, I think at least the key tech ecosystem, they are more diverse. You have people from all over the world, people with different background and cultures working, even in London or in Silicon Valley or in New York, Berlin. Let's say you want to build a local team, and still your local team will be so diverse, right? With people with different ways of getting things done, with different talent levels, right? And you can probably get similar or better talent when you are going distributed. Maybe you're just opening up a wider net for you to get more and better talent. You can filter them out more to really push up the bar. So yeah, I kind of look. I'm a big fan, right? That's why we are doing CodeMonk. And like yourself, we always had a remote and distributed team. We had offices, but I think quite a lot of people were working from home as well before pandemic. And when pandemic happened, it was like very, very little disruption for us. We just continued working naturally. All we had to do is getting rid of our offices and save some cost. But the way we were working did not really change a lot. But I want to come back to your experience of managing this distributed team. Now, given that you have done it for many years, and very, very successful setup that you have currently, what are a few tips um, or insights you can give to potential managers who are looking to, maybe they're already running a distributed team or they're looking to form a distributed team? What are a few tips that you can share from your own experiences?
Yeah, well, I think the main kind of way of working would be, be very deliberate about asynchronous work. So I think it's a huge productivity boost, and I think it's really important for distributed teams because you can't just go over there. You can't just watch what everyone else is working on over their shoulder, or you can't kind of tap your colleague on the and say, hey. Well, you can on Slack, I guess, but people don't. Ask a colleague, hey, how does this work? You kind of need to have documentation for what's going on and what's happening. So I think it's important to be clear to set up effective communication. Make sure that can happen asynchronously. So if someone has wants a meeting about a new project or whatever, like write a document, a briefing document about what it is, like an RFC, a request for comment. Share that out so people can digest it, can read it, can comment on it, and all of that kind of thinking can happen asynchronously. And then so that you can use the sync time, the live in call time, to do the things that you really need to do live, which is those debates, those discussions, which often drive a lot of ideas too. To still have those, but try and do some of the work asynchronously, not live. And then make sure that you can share information across the organization easily, right? So we use Google Docs, and we use some for some things. We use Notion and ClickUp and things like that. But like that, in Google Docs, all the stuff, all our briefs, all our thinking, all our plans, our strategy, everything essentially in the company is accessible in one place to everybody in the organization. So the default visibility is everyone can see it, right? So it's transparent. It means when you have someone new coming into the project, it's easy to get caught up with what's going on and what the plan is, or if someone's done some work, it's easy to share that out and get feedback from other people without having to interrupt their schedule and say, hey, I need all these live meetings, or without having to make loads of live meetings, which, if you've got different time zones, that can be very disruptive to people's personal lives, right? You have to accept some disruption to your 9 to 5, box. You do end up being on calls at 8 p.m. or at 6 a.m. or whatever, sometimes at 10 p.m. But you can minimize how disruptive that is in your life by having your organization work in an asynchronous way. And then it also makes time for asynchronous work also allows you to have kind of have less calls. So you're not on calls the whole time. So you have more time to be productive and actually think and actually do real work. And ultimately also have time to fit personal commitments around work, like picking up your kids and from school, or going to a school play in the middle of the day or something. Like that's okay. You can kind of shift things around a little bit, right? So I think being very deliberate about the intent of how you do asynchronous work. I think using video and when you do a live call, try and make it as rich as possible. So don't try and all the asynchronous possible stuff is already done. So you're having that real debate, real discussion. Make sure you use video. Don't sit there with your video off, because the whole point of this live discussion is that you have more. You're communicating in a more human way, I guess. I think experiment with different asynchronous tools is important. I would say that's all asynchronous. I think that's probably the biggest topic for me. The other thing is about being deliberate on culture. So deliberate on how you manage your culture for a distributed work environment, I think, or distributed team. I think you need to, we can talk about values. We can talk about all sorts of things there. One thing that we do is, which I think is the right thing, is once a year we fly everyone in our team to one place in the world for a week, and we spend that week together getting to know each other and making friendships. And I think that's something that people sometimes miss with just video calls. It's quite hard to make friendships if you haven't met someone in person. And so we do that every single year, and it's quite a big cost to us too, right? Because we're so distributed. So we've flown everyone into Seoul, into Belgrade, into Lisbon, into Madrid, into Florence, like different places around the world. And it's that week kind of builds those really personal connections that when everyone goes back into their own place around the world, they then kind of have friends that they're working with on the video. And that, I think that's also been very helpful to us.
Yeah, that's great. Talking of getting team together, I'm actually going India next week to meet the team, and most of the people I'll be meeting first time. We are all getting them together in one location for a weekend away, and hopefully, we'll have a good time, everyone together. One question I want to ask you regarding like distributed team. Now, this topic often come up in our internal discussion every now and then. Should we have time tracking for the team members or not? What's your view on that? Logging time and tracking time. Quite a few tools available for that.
Yeah, it's a great question. I don't know where I sit on it. We don't. In my teams, we don't track time. So I get that's where I sit on it, right? But I can see both sides of the argument. I don't, sometimes I track my own time, not to share with anybody, but just so I can track my own productivity and be aware of how I am spending my own time. Like how much of my time am I spending on a podcast or on emails or on one-on-ones or doing this kind of work or being unproductive or whatever. So I think there is definitely advantages of time tracking. We have opted to focus more on outputs of people and not so much on time not on time tracking at all. And I think, and my gut is that we get more back from people because of that kind of trust and that way of working. But there are times when I'm sure we all saw the articles on. I think there's an article on Hacker News about a year ago of this individual that was boasting that they had 10 jobs or something like that, and that they were like, hey, I've got 10 jobs, each of them is paying me 100k, I'm on $1 million ARR, I'm for each job I've got these 10 different screens open, and I say a few words in meetings, my camera's always off, and you just like, as a manager, you're just like, wow, I wonder how many people have got this kind of setup up and running right in the world. So I think there is advantage to individuals and to teams in time tracking. I think there's advantage, I find time tracking sometimes useful for my own time. So obviously no one's asking me for it. I'm not sharing with anybody. It's just for me. So I definitely think there's value there, but I am on the side of the fence of trust and not time tracking. Actually, people end up giving you back more. But I'm not. I don't know. I'm undecided on that topic. Where are you on that topic?
Good one. We have every few months, this debate will come up in our company. Now, so far, we're running almost fully remote setup for about 5 years now. And so far, we have not implemented any time tracking for anybody. And I have a fundamental belief that when you hire people, especially in a remote setting, you should be able to trust them to do that job. Right. If you do trust them that they will do their respective job, and if they do it, then there is no need for any time tracking, because the work is getting done or, problems are being solved. But if you have a situation where, let's say things are not progressing, you're not getting clear communication from a team or a particular team member, and that, okay, there's definitely some concerns here, then I think it's better to remove or address that particular concern or problem head on, trying to cover it up with a time tracking solution. And if the problem is your process or tooling or anything else, fix that. If the problem is a particular individual, then it's better to relieve that particular individual, because clearly he's not performing, he or she is not performing, will drag the rest of the team down. You will create unnecessary friction by implementing time tracking and so on. So far, every time this discussion comes up, the decision always is like, okay, no, we don't want to do it actually. We have some really good people in our team. Um, Sometimes we don't even need to check whether they are available or not. We know the work is completed. We can see it in different logs. We can see it like a proactive communication in Slack. And sometimes, even like weekends, some people are working. I mean, we are flexi working, so some of them will work over the weekend and will notify that, hey, this is what I have got done. Just make sure that you get X, Y, Z done when you come back online and so on. So I think we are getting good mileage out of it from our team members, and I think time tracking is not something that I'm a big fan of or want to do actually. It just looks like that big brother continuously watching you, and suddenly you are trying to justify your times than actually doing productive work.
Yeah. Exactly. Although I don't think time tracking takes that much time, right? Like when I've done it for myself, it doesn't take that much time to do it.
Yeah.
I think that's a relatively poor excuse. But I think it's that like trust and also for the organization to measure outputs rather than hours, right?
Yeah.
I think that's also really important. And to be clear across your whole organization that like what everyone's trying to achieve is the things that have been set, the things that they're working on. And I think that kind of rather than the hours, like I was when I was in yesterday when I was in a WeWork space, there was this guy that was sat in the table next to me, and he spent the whole day talking quite a loud voice about choosing chairs for the office. And I was just like, wow, this guy is wasting a lot of time on like deciding on chairs for a whole day, right? The lack of like productivity on certain days of individuals is not unique to distributed work. I think in fact it happens more, I think, in an office environment, but people don't notice it because the person is there physically, right? They're like, oh, they're there and therefore they're at work. It doesn't matter what they're actually doing or how productive they actually are. So it's not a unique problem. And I think, just like in offices, people wouldn't have this discussion, I don't think, about should everyone in the office, create a timesheet for every minute they're spending at work. That wasn't a topic that came up in the office, right? Like no one ever asked that question. At least I wasn't aware of that question. But now that people are working in a remote situation, they're now thinking, oh, well, they're remote and therefore they're going to be less productive and can be, trusted less. And I actually think that's not true. I think fundamentally that's not true. I think they're just as trustworthy as they were in the office, and they're probably more productive than they were in the office. That does not mean that you should not try and optimize productivity in a team. You absolutely should, but time tracking is probably not the right. It's not the tool that I've chosen. But I would be very interested in it. I would love to hear the counter argument to this, right? I would love for you to bring someone else on this podcast that says time tracking is the answer. Let's have that debate. That sounds fascinating.
Yeah, definitely. I would like to hear that as well. If somebody coming in and say, hey, by doing time tracking, we have been able to scale up our productivity by 10%, 20%, whatever, right?
Yeah.
Or remove this problem for the org and so on, right? Yeah. So yeah. Anyways, let's move on a little bit from this whole distributed team to more around the technology trends that are happening around us, right? What do you think? The key tech trends right now or incoming or near future that you're most excited about?
I mean, AI and LLMs and Gen AI. That single topic is the topic. I think for me, we built. We were doing AI back in 2013. We were doing natural language processing, not with AI, not with deep learning at that time, because it wasn't really a thing. It was a thing, but it was a thing that scientists did. But then when TensorFlow came out, we started doing deep learning based natural language processing. We've basically been building knowledge graphs since 2012. So for 12 years, and now we've built this massive, like, huge knowledge graph and like huge amount of like historic capability in this. But LLMs can do pretty much what took us 10 years. They can do it kind of out of the box. And it's kind of like, when you look at that, and it's not entirely true, but it's kind of true. You look at it and you go like, wow, like AI is moving on so fast. It levels the playing field. Like everyone's got access to these large models. The number of large models out there are relatively large amount. You can you can choose to send a call to OpenAI or Google or Microsoft or Anthropic or Hugging Face or like, so many, right, that you can like choose to use, and different costs and different capabilities. It's amazing. I think it's like it totally opens up. It's a whole new world from a product side. It's also a little bit like, I think you have to understand when you're building a new product though, that everyone's got access to it. You're not unique in being able to access it. You might be first to market, but everyone's going to have access to it or has access to it. So then it does change the question, I think, of like, what is your competitive advantage, your sustainable competitive advantage? Your competitive advantage might be that it's open, you're using OpenAI's API and you're building a thin layer on top. It might be in a competitive advantage this week, maybe even next couple of months, and maybe you can acquire enough customers to give you for that to then to become your competitive advantage, right? You've got customers and data and stuff, but the fact that it's has LLM Gen AI features is not going to be your competitive advantage long term. Unless you're very, very fast and very, very good at what you're doing. And that, I'm sure there definitely are examples of that. But like, so that's super, super interesting, I think. I do also think there's going to be an interesting impact on jobs. People always say, oh, well, people will find other jobs. It's always happened, right? You get rid of one industry and they move to people find work in another industry. I'm actually not so sure whether that, and I know the theory, right? And I've studied some of the theory when I was at school. But does that hold true today? I don't know. I struggle to believe it does, because I'm seeing, our teams are doing stuff they were doing before way faster now without needing the same number of people on it. We haven't fired people, but we probably have not hired people because we have that, those capabilities now. And I'm sure this is happening everywhere. So like, what's going to happen? Like in the legal space, for example, are lawyers going to stop hiring the junior lawyers and the paralegals because AI is going to do the work? I think so. Is the same thing going to happen in accountancy? I think so. Like, is it going to happen in coding? Most people are talking about that, right? They're talking about the fact that, even in coding, if you're not, senior, as in like specialized or a standout person, software is going to do some of that coding for people. Like, it might not happen in 2 years, but if you look at a 10-year horizon, I do think it's a 10-year horizon. It's not a 100-year, right? Like, the world is going to be different, and the capabilities we're going to have for products is going to be amazing. But the number of people, your customer base is going to be different. They're going to use different things. Yeah, I find it fascinating.
Yeah.
And scary.
Yeah, that's interesting, because we are also like, I'm of an opinion that I don't want to add too many people to our team, and instead have the current people be more productive using some of these AI tools, including programming, like the GitHub Copilot and some other technologies. Our marketing team definitely is using a lot of AI tools in our marketing, whatever task we need to get done. And interestingly, last year I attended this conference in Bay Area in Silicon Valley, and Sandeep Khosla, one of the big tech investor out there, was talking. And something interesting he mentioned. He said that if I was a lawyer, if I was a doctor, if I was a programmer today, then I'll be really, really, really be scared about my future, because in 5 years' time, all these three professions are going to be replaced by AI. So any task which is like rule based, can easily be programmed using a rule or state based systems, will be replaced by AI. No doubt about that. Any jobs where there is a lot of variability, a lot of room for creativity, maybe those jobs will stay at least for a while. but yeah, I mean, it's interesting, maybe I'm also a little bit worried. Okay, being always work in tech, what is the future? What next for me? Where should I be putting more of my brain power on? I
Do you
just
know?
coming.
Do you know where? Have you figured that out?
No, you know what? I have a wild theory. Everybody needs to eat food, so maybe just focus on something to do with food. Which is also your topic that you are passionate about. So just wanted to ask
There
one more
are
question.
robots now that cook as well, right? Like,
Yeah, but growing your own food, land, the
I'll be a
quality of
farmer.
food you can get. Yeah, maybe I don't know. I don't
Yeah,
know.
but there's going to be robots that do farming too.
Yeah, but it's then, at least you can grow your own food and eat, maybe
Oh,
you
I
don't
see.
need any other
You're
luxuries.
thinking like small, like family unit size thing.
Yes,
Like,
yes.
how can we not? Yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, and land and ownership of capital has always been something interesting, and I think it's Bill Gates owns a percentage. It's quite small relative to the total, but it's a large in absolute terms amount of land,
Yeah,
right? He's invested. It's been quite interesting to
yeah.
kind of strategy of his way where to put his capital. But yeah, I think every job is going to basically, unless you stand out and you're like, the
Mm,
top 5% of people or 10, 20% or whatever, but like, there's going to be like a huge, what's going to happen when 50%, when the bottom performing 50%, I'm not saying they're bad performing, but the bottom performing 50% don't have a job anymore. What's going to happen? Like,
I
that
know.
doesn't, the top 50% are not going to have a happy life here, right? That's not good for the top 50%. There's going to be anarchy. Like, what happens in that world? Like, it's, but this is going way off like tech. Like, I think
Yeah,
short term opportunity for tech products is super interesting, and I don't think it's just like I don't think that it's the opportunity is just about what things you can build anew. I think it's also about what things you could build to defend things. Like, obviously cyber is interesting for that, but
mm,
also I was thinking about this last week when I keep getting all these emails, spam messages, not spam, sales messages, right?
mm,
People trying to sell me stuff, services, marketing, videos, all sorts of things, right? Loads of them, and they and like and you can tell that they're spam because some of them have got unsubscribe links, so it's definitely it's a drip campaign.
mm,
On the other ones, some of them use the same words. Even like you can between different companies, they use the same structure and the same words, and you're like, okay,
mm.
either that individual's copied a template, or more likely, the same program has written it, all the stuff. So, what about defense against spam? Like, you could build a great defender, an AI defender, or like an automatic answering bot for all your emails that will kind of like only escalate when it's something truly needs your attention. Like, there's so many opportunities in almost every field, and
Yeah,
I think that is really exciting. It's going to be a really fun 5-10 years of building.
yeah.
Um,
Are
and
you
yeah,
thinking of doing another startup?
I'll definitely do lots more startups. So yeah, I'm finding this super exciting. I think I also find it hard to the idea of leaving my team. I've been there for 4 years now after the acquisition. It's a long time, right?
Yeah.
In fact, it's actually probably almost my 4-year anniversary in like a day or two. And I would have thought that I would have left earlier. The problem is, for me, it's kind of a good thing, I guess, is that I really like the team. I've built that team myself for like 12 years, right? I
Mm,
like that team and I like the product. Like, I like what it does. I like the vision and the mission of like helping people cook and be healthy and eat. And Samsung has got, is basically supporting it financially, and with distribution on their hardware. So if that's also hard to leave, right? A team that you like, you can get to scale, you can work at scale, you can work with on a problem you like. But I do know that I need to, for myself, at some point, build more startups, right? Because that's kind of
mm.
where I think I get real energy. The energy and the adventure, although it's not all fun, like a lot of it sucks. Building new companies, I would say, 70% of it sucks, but 30% of it is like the high adrenaline and adventure and like, joy. And I guess I want I want that adrenaline. I want that fun. I want to do it again. And I love smaller teams too, actually. You talked about not wanting to scale your team.
Yeah.
How many people have you got in your team right now?
I think we are just about 30. I think 30 or
Yeah.
31.
Yeah, I think 30 is kind of the max you want to get to. Like, I was talking about this with a friend who used to be in the army, and he was like, the way the army organizes its people is into these like groups, which I can't remember how many people are in a squad or what they're all called, right? But there's science behind keeping teams small and close knit, and the bigger you make it, the more you don't feel part of a team, and you feel you don't feel part of the identity, right? And like I think there's really the most exciting times for me were 10 to 30 people. Like those size teams is just like super fun. And then when you get larger into a corporate, different opportunities, right? You get resources, you get distribution opportunities, you can build things at scale, which is super exciting to get. Wow, I can build something and it goes to like millions of people. That's exciting. But the team feeling that with larger teams is different. It is different.
Yeah.
So yeah, savor those 30 people and use AI to keep it small as long as you possibly can would be my
Yeah, no, that's exactly what we are doing. We're just trying to identify more tools, more technologies that we can leverage. We are always open to purchasing more product, implementing them in our core workflows and all. We always try a lot of tools in every part of the business. Not every tool is good. Some of the tools are all right. Some of the tools are actually pretty good. We always try. We always give it a try, and see how it works, right? Anyways, I think I had a one related question for you. You said you may want to do a startup again. If you were to do it, or if you end up doing one, would you go back on TV again? Given your prior experience.
Would I get back on TV?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Like Apprentice or something.
Yeah, absolutely. If I had the opportunity to. Like, in terms of, it up-leveled my access to capital, my access to sales, my access to marketing, it's short, right? The Apprentice is short term. It's maybe 6 months of mini fame, but you'd be amazed. It was a very highly rated show at that time, or highly watched show. I think it was like 8 or 12 million or something viewers or something. It was big. I'm not sure how big it is now. I haven't watched much of it since. But the number of people that got in touch afterwards to want to invest or to want to buy the product or get involved in a partnership or whatever, it was significant, like really significant. We got partnerships with so many people just from being on the show. And then afterwards, when you wanted to go and do a sales pitch into like a big company, like huge global company, the people who you want to go and pitch usually say yes, not because they are necessarily interested in your product. That's a problem too, but like just because they want to like meet the person who's on the TV show, right?
Yeah.
Like, so you can get into most doors you want to get into, not for forever, but for like a year or 2 years or something like that. So and then media coverage. I was covered by all the tabloid kind of crappy newspaper press, magazines, all that. I was on some front covers of Radio Times, and I've got the front cover actually on my wall over here. Like, I was the opportunities are like huge. You get so much opportunities from being like even like mini celebrity status, like Z-list for 6 months. It's amazing how our society kind of like rewards.
I think, like they say, any PR is a good PR.
Yeah, and it's not bad PR. It's kind of it's okay PR, right? But it was amazing, and the process was really fun. It's super fun being on a TV show, like The Apprentice. The huge budget, going around recording, like working with some really big weird project things you'd never get to do. It's super fun. It really was fun, and I loved it, and it was very high ROI on my time in terms of like without it, I wouldn't be where I am today. I wouldn't be where I am today if I didn't have The Apprentice, if I didn't have if I hadn't done distributed work, if I hadn't chosen a business where people are interested in the mission and vision, right? So they buy into it and they support it. Like food, it's very easy. So all those things have definitely helped me get to where I am. And if I hadn't done distributor work and hadn't done The Apprentice, there's no way I would have been successful. I don't think.
Cool. Thanks a lot, Nick. I think it's about time that we wrap this. But before we end, there are a few standardized questions that we want to ask every single guest on our show, but slightly off topic, right? Um, so, if you don't mind, can you tell us who is the one individual that you have always been motivated by? Living or dead doesn't matter, but someone you really look up high up to.
That's such a hard question to answer. I don't have anybody that jumps to my mind that's a celebrity, but I would say that one person is actually my wife. She encourages me when times are dark and celebrates with me when times are good. And she's also a stable income. She's an eye surgeon, so she's a stable income person who's like gives me some security in when times are not looking so great. So again, I find her that is like truly motivating for me to have like something to fall back on and someone who supports me no matter whether I'm successful or not. Because I think the fear of failure as a founder is real and has causes lots of negative behavior, and my fear of failure is less because of how she is. So I think that would be the person. That's the only person I can think of immediately as you ask me that question.
It's all right. It's all right. And who is one person, living or dead, living or not alive, that you would like to meet?
Steve Jobs.
Yeah.
I've watched a lot of his content. I'm hugely impressed by Steve Jobs. I think he's, his ability to foresee the market and simplify and what he achieved. And you hear negative stories about him as well of how he treated people. Like I think he's a fascinating person. I think Steve Jobs.
Okay, cool, wonderful. And the last one, who do you think we should invite next on this podcast?
Well, I mean, distributed work is a good topic, I think, or kind of an interesting topic.
It can be any topic, Maybe we might invite Elon Musk.
I mean, obviously, someone like Elon Musk, but like, do you want it to be realistic or do you want it to be aspirational?
No, it can be anything, We'll try, hopefully we'll get to a state where we might be able to invite him.
Who's that person that runs that fund that did loads of Bitcoins to the fund stuff?
Satoshi.
No, there's a lady, Kath, is it? Kathy Wood. So she did Kathy Wood did that fund where they ARK Invest. She basically did a bunch investing in like really cutting edge stuff that she thought was going to go like, and they were all the rage 2 years ago, right? When the market was going well, they were doing so well. And then obviously the market crashed, Bitcoin crashed, it's obviously recovered, Bitcoin crashed, all that stuff, right? Everyone's like, ARK is all crap. But she's been so, I'm not an investor in ARK. And I'm not an investor in crypto. I'm not a crypto fanatic or fan. But she is like, her views are interesting. She's like so super bullish on self-driving cars, on crypto, on like the new AI, the new things that are coming like in science and technology. She's so bullish on it, and I do think there is something to be said about there's something in that about going all in on what you believe, and I think she has some really interesting views. I don't agree with all of them, but I think she'd be an interesting guest.
Interesting. Talking of Bitcoin, I think it's an all-time high yesterday. If I read the news correctly.
It's crazy how it's got up again. It's just fascinating, right?
Yes,
We
that's
should have
great.
all
And
bought it when it was 5K, and we should have all bought it when it went back down to 22, whatever it was.
you
Now
know,
it's
I
back.
did actually.
Oh, you did?
I did. I did. Last year I had some spare cash and I said, okay, what do I do? So I bought some few tokens, Bitcoin and a few others. Not everything is doing well, but Bitcoin and Solana at this moment are like doing crazy. They're doing really crazy. I don't know. I might cash out. I might stay in. I haven't decided, but I think I'll just stay in. It's not a big investment. It's a small investment. So, maybe a good dinner out someday.
Well, this is what. Yeah. I mean, it's I think I can't remember who it was, but there were some people who were predicting the Bitcoin price to be I can't remember.
100K.
It was very, 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 very high. So
Yeah.
good luck, dude. I'm staying out of that game. I'm focusing on my energy on building stuff. But I am excited for you
Cool.
from the
Thank
sidelines.
you. Thank you. Thanks a lot, Nick. So, anyways, I think let's wrap this one. So, thanks a lot today for your time. Some really interesting discussion. I think your experience is amazing on TV, off TV, running this 24/7 distributed team. Taking a startup to all the way to acquisition and staying with that team for a long time. I think that's an unusual founder trait. Most founder would want to leave after a year or two once their whatever acquisition terms are completed. But yeah, great job, Nick, and wish you all the best with your team, with your next endeavor, whatever you want to do. And always happy to meet you and stay in touch whenever you're free. Right? Cool. That's it, folks. Have a good day. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Thanks.